take back control of huge sums of money, £350 million a week, and spend it on our priorities, such as the NHS.
During the referendum campaign, Boris Johnson, easily the most popular political backer for Leave, was driven around the country in a big red bus emblazoned with this slogan: "We send the EU £350 million a week. Let's fund our NHS instead." The UK Statistics Authority described that figure as a clear misuse of official statistics, as it did not take into account the rebate which applied before Britain paid its contributions to the EU. Some news shows did their best to explain why the claim simply wasn't accurate. This is News 5.
And streets up and down the country, people are trying to work out if that 350 million is accurate. Well, in 2014, we received about £85 million a week thanks to a rebate negotiated in the 1980s. We also received about £88 million in payments to sectors like agriculture. And on top of that, there was about £27 million paid to the private sector. Add all those together and take them away from that 350 million figure, and you end up with a net contribution to the EU of more like £150 million a week.
And here is ITV.
The suggestion, as you can see, is that we send £350 million a week to the EU, which could be spent on the NHS. But it's important to recall that the UK does get a rebate, as well as money back in grants, which leaves the real figure at around £161 million a week.
Undaunted, Johnson shamelessly continued to repeat the claim.
Let's deal with your arguments. One of them is on the side of this bus. We send 350 million to Europe. We don't, and you know we don't. No, we don't. You know we don't. Admit that that figure is grotesquely misleading at best.
I won't.
In fact, the catastrophic impact on the UK economy from changes to trade after leaving the EU is likely to be far bigger than any savings from the UK's membership fee.
You're wandering around this country with a dirty great lie on the side of your bus.
No, because that gross figure is the right figure.
It didn't stop with the claim about the £350 million a week.
In 2016, the referendum, you and your chum Dominic Cummings in the Vote Leave campaign suggested 80 million Turks would come to this country if we stayed in the EU, which was absurd then and is absurd now. Doesn't all of this show you'll say anything just to win an election, in this case, the Conservative leadership?
I didn't say anything about Turkey in the I didn't say anything about. I didn't say anything about Turkey.
But as Channel 4 Fact Check pointed out, Boris Johnson's claim that he didn't say anything about Turkey in the referendum campaign wasn't true. As early as April 17, 2016, Mr Johnson was quoted by newspapers as saying, "I'm very pro-Turkish, but what I certainly can't imagine is a situation in which 77 million of my fellow Turks and those of Turkish origin can come here without any checks at all. That is mad. That won't work."
I didn't say anything about Turkey.
On June 5th, 2016, Johnson was interviewed by the BBC's Andrew Marr.
If the poster said it is government policy that Turkey at some stage should join the EU, that would be true. Turkey is joining the EU. It's not true.
No, actually, it's government policy that Turkish membership of the EU should be accelerated.
Well, at some point in the future, they've got lots of hurdles.
I'm sorry. It's government policy that Turkish membership of the EU should be speeded up, and there are clips of the Prime Minister in Ankara advocating the speeding up of this.
In the heat of this campaign, you have all gone, and you particularly, you've gone a bit wild. That's not true, that post.
I didn't say anything about Turkey.
I don't mind whether Turkey joins the EU, provided the UK leaves the EU. I mean, that's where I am on this.
I didn't say anything about Turkey.
In fact, during the 2016 referendum campaign, Johnson repeatedly raised the idea that Turkey could eventually become an EU member and its citizens would eventually be able to migrate to the UK. But Johnson knew that Turkey's route to EU accession could be vetoed by Britain or any other member state. As Channel 4 Fact Check also point out, on June 16, 2016, Boris Johnson put his signature to a letter to the then Prime Minister David Cameron calling for him to guarantee that the UK would veto Turkish accession to the EU. The letter stated if the government cannot give this guarantee, the public will draw the reasonable conclusion that the only way to avoid having common borders with Turkey is to vote leave and take back control on 23rd of June.
I didn't say anything about Turkey.
After the referendum, Johnson shamelessly continued to mislead the public on Brexit.
And there'll be no non-tariff barriers to trade.
But again, that wasn't true. What we got was this.
The truth is that Boris Johnson promised the deal that you signed would, and I quote, if anything, allow our companies and our exporters to do even more business with our European friends. And the truth is that because of all sorts of new paperwork, there are now 20-page export health certificates for vets, there's 27-page catch certificates for exporting fish, there's duties for goods of all kinds which don't meet rules of origin requirements. And if it's going to make trading with business with Europe harder and harder and harder, then the common sense conclusion is that people will do less of it.
A key part of Johnson's oven-ready Brexit deal was the Northern Ireland Protocol, and in July 2019, Johnson made this promise.
Under no circumstances, whatever happens, will I allow the EU or anyone else to create any kind of division down the Irish Sea.
3 months later, he agreed to checks in the Irish Sea. When the protocol came into force in 2021, this was the result.
We've got a border erected down the middle of our country, a border which applies checks, applies costs, applies extra bureaucracy. It's unthinkable.
Johnson knew exactly what damage his oven-ready deal would cause when he signed it because his government's own impact assessment told him. But Johnson shamelessly continued to tell the public this.
They should believe exactly what I say, which is there will be no checks on goods going from GB to NI, from NI to GB.
This document is talking about checks both ways.
And that's wrong, because there won't be checks.
So you're saying that this is wrong, the government's own impact assessment is wrong, your Brexit secretary is wrong, all these people are wrong, and you're right?
Yes, because there's no question of there being checks on goods going NIGB or GBNI.
It was completely untrue. This is what DUP MP Ian Paisley said in 2021.
Boris Johnson did tell me personally that he would, after agreeing to the protocol, he would sign up to changing that protocol and indeed tearing it up. But this was just for the semantics.
If correct, it means the then Prime Minister went to the country in the December 2019 general election with an oven-ready Brexit deal which he believed needed to be torn apart.